Back to the channel, and today I'd like to really cover what is, in a sense, the catalyst of this idea that I'm putting forward called the Trinity, which is the idea of having an extremely highly functional body, free of pain, a body that's full of pleasure and where there's energy and this sense of blissfulness within the physicality of the physical structure and how the physical structure moves through reality. And then having the creativity and the innovation of a highly radical artist, an artist that looks into what the world and looks into experience and is able to see things from the creative spirit perspective. And then the disposition of a mystic or an adept, where there is this sense of peace and this sense of understanding and this sense of being guided by what I call the guiding principle. So there's this connection to this higher principle that moves and shapes us through life. So that's the Trinity. And how do we get there? And in amongst all of this, when we are engaged in the pursuit and the process of the Trinity, we discover that along the way, we're able to reinvigorate, re-energize our bodies and our minds and our spirits, so that we have what I've described as this incredibly high quality of experience of life. And that's really what we're after here. And what you'll discover when the Trinity is activated, and I'm not saying the Trinity is completely activated in me, this is part of the journey, this is the quest, this is the adventure, this is what we're aiming for, this is what we want to activate and have as ongoing process and principle in our lives. So the Trinity covers all of these things, because when the Trinity is activated, our relationship with ourself is of a high quality. Our relationship with others is of a high quality. Our relationship with our work, with all of these different aspects of our lives, with our abundance, with how we bring things to life, how we create, how we manifest, how we take care of our environment, is all linked to the Trinity. So another way of putting this is that in this book that I wrote, which actually is mainly a workbook, funny enough, and I did this for myself, and I gave it out to friends and people that I thought would benefit from this for quite some time. And I call it a radiant operating system for human beings. So what's really what we're after is to switch over from this anxious little self, that kind of operating system, the command operating system, as I call it, to the radiant operating system, and experience that fully for ourselves, and then help to share that with other people, so we can then create this ongoing uplifting energy that goes out into the world. And all kinds of beautiful and creative things spring out of that. Now, first off, I just wanted to take you through and say, I'm kind of not coming to this from nowhere. I've probably read, I mean, this is one of the things, I've probably read thousands, I say thousands, but I'll probably exaggerate, maybe several thousand, I don't know, maybe that's not an exaggeration, of books and informations about how to increase human potential and maximize human potential. And I've been studying this probably since I was, I don't know, maybe 18. I really came across this idea of how we can enhance our experience of reality and enhance our experience of life and have this high quality of experience. And along the way, I've fallen off the path so many times and then come back to it. But now, as I'm approaching being 60, it's really become something that I want to focus on very seriously in many ways, although I'm not what I would describe a serious person. So it's really having that sense of all of the things that I've studied, all of the possibilities I've looked into, all of the ways of approaching health, approaching the mind, approaching our spirit, spiritual practices, all of those things. With all this vast scope of knowledge, and some people say like knowledge avails you nothing, as in self-knowledge avails you nothing. So there's no point in having all of this knowledge, like our culture is awash with knowledge. But it's really understanding that when that part of ourselves, like the part of the Trinity, which is the disposition and the peace and this sense of connection to a higher principle, is active in our being, then we are gifted, in a sense, the direction and the things that we need to focus on. They become obvious. Things become more illuminated, the things that we need to move towards. Now, just some of the things I've looked at so you can get an idea. The complete system of self-healing. This is kind of the internal exercises, Dr. Stephen T. Chang. And, you know, this is kind of where I'm going to, got to set my camera crazy with that, where I'm going to sort of be heading in terms of the catalyst of how we start. But other things, you know, Dr. David Hawkins, you know, more known for Power versus Force, but some don't really know that his book Healing and Recovery. So there's all of these kind of things, the plastic mind. I mean, it goes on and on. Anything can be healed. The book of floating, flotation. And this is actually an amazing book. The last chapter of this book is absolutely stunning, kind of what I'm talking about. Then there's diet, nutrition, just something here, the sprouting book. I'll be going into that whole thing of diet and nutrition and energy, how we can eat to give ourselves the maximum energy and maximum potential to really pursue this journey. And then even things like, you know, Tony Robbins' Life Force, this big tome, last book that he wrote, which is really, you know, kind of another way of looking at it, looking at analytics and the latest advances in things like stem cell technology and what have you. Then also we have, you know, the amazing Dr. I don't know, what was it? Hulda, which is the cure for all diseases, another huge tome which talks about sort of this thing called the zapper and the electricity, how to rid yourself of pests and parasites and things like that. But really what all of these things kick off with is that if you look at the human system and you look at the things that are going on, and things become very obvious in a way, because, you know, we can go for long times without food. You know, I've fasted for very long periods of time. So although I've lost quite a lot of weight, I've done 21-day water fasts. I've done juice fasts, prolonged fasts of 12 months of being a fruitarian, just eating fruit. I've even engaged in what's known as breatharian. So the idea of just literally living on the energy of the breath. And that's what I really want to talk about, not becoming a breatharian, but the idea that we can go without food, we can go without a lot of things, we can go without sex, we can go without social media, we can go without all of these different things. That if we start to strip things away, what is the fundamental thing? And it is breath. Now, something that I would recommend really connecting with is a guy called James Nestor. Now, James Nestor has written a book called Breath. And it's a really interesting book because he approached this whole thing of the breath from kind of, you know, a scientific perspective. He was an investigative journalist, and he really looked at this, and it came to him after he had an experience doing a breath work class, and this lit something up, and and said there was really something in this. And the breath in all its glory is the fundamental essence. It's the way into all of this, because we can look at all of these other things, but if we haven't got the basics there, we haven't got the fundamentals, then there's not much point in doing the other things, because although they'll have an impact, it's like, how do we start at the root of all of this? Now, we could go in through the consciousness and the mind, but of course it's all consciousness. But really, the most basic and the most easy place to start is the thing that we do and we can't do without. So if you ever tried holding your breath, I mean, I've done various breath techniques where you can actually hold your breath for several minutes. And if you read James Nestor's book, you'll see that, you know, these divers, pearl divers, and people that do these kind of these record-breaking dives deep down in the ocean, they can, you know, I forget what it is now, but you know, it's and maybe 10 minutes, more than that. I don't know, something crazy. And even David Blaine has done his stunts where he's held his breath underwater and broken all kinds of world records and stuff like that. So, but no matter, even with that, we're talking minutes here. So the breath is fundamental. And one of the biggest interventions you can make to start this process of the Trinity is to look at where you're breathing from. And it's very evident that in order to really help invigorate ourselves, re-energize ourselves, rejuvenate ourselves, we have to look at where we're breathing and how we're breathing. So before we do all of these breaths, the very first thing to look at is, are you nasal breathing or are you a mouth breather? Now, mouth breathing, if you look into it, causes a whole series of problems for us. Mouth breathing at night, they say, can lead to, you know, even sleep apnea, all of these kind of things. Even like I spoke in some of my other videos, you know, gum health, dental health. So if you want to improve our dental, our oral well-being, it's good to look at how we're breathing. Now, a lot of African athletes, these long distance athletes, they will run and they will only breathe through their nose. Now, if you try that, you will find that extraordinarily difficult. But the first place to ignite this is through the breath. Now, I probably won't be able to do this now. Now, one of the things that I'm kind of consider myself almost a connoisseur of breath, because I actually play didgeridoo as well. And that's called circular breathing. But the thing with all of it is, I'm showing off there really. The thing with all of this is that once you switch to breathing through your nose primarily, you can't do that when you're speaking, obviously, you will discover that I think what it does, I mean, I've got to get this right, the whole science. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor or anything like this. I think it's to do with nitric oxide. And when you have more nitric oxide, it helps get blood through your body in a much more efficient way. It expands the arteries and the capillaries and all of the things that carry blood and whatnot. We don't need to get into all of that. I mean, it's not necessary to know all of this stuff. It's more necessary to do it and experience it for yourself. And your own experience will tell you whether something that you're doing is effective or not whether, you know, you've read up on all, like I said, all this knowledge about it. It's like actually the rubber on the road is to do this stuff. Now, when you start to breathe through your nose only, and we can go into all these other forms of breathing, which I'll take you through in another video of what I've discovered are the most effective ways to engage in this activity of increasing the oxygenation of your body and this increasing nitrogen. But the first way is to start breathing through your nose and becoming aware of when you're mouth breathing. So if you're walking, for example, you should be breathing through your nose. There's no reason that you don't need an excessive amount of oxygen in your body. So you need to be breathing through your nose. When you're sitting, often people I see, they're just sitting at a computer and you can see they're breathing through their mouths. So that's a very important place to begin this process, to start to become aware of your breath and aware of where you're breathing from. And we could go into this whole thing, which we will further on, is this idea of breathing from the diaphragm, from breathing deep in the body, the diaphragm, and not up here. Because our culture it keeps us anxious. So you'll notice that most people are kind of breathing from up here. So they're not taking in enough air. Now, the other thing with air and oxygen and all of this thing, the thing that we breathe, is that it is energy. You could call it chi, you could call it vitas, you could call it prana, you call it, it's full of electricity, it's full of energy. And the amount of energy that we're able to bring in and to metabolize will determine the amount of energy that we have. And this goes the same for our food as well, which I'm going to be talking about in other videos. So if we get this thing in our mind that we are energy and we are vessels of energy, we are energetic vessels, and the more energy we can bring into our vessel and process through that vessel, the more enriched and enlivened our experience of life is going to be. It just stands to reason, doesn't it? So all of these people that I've been flicking through here, like, just the Sprout book about energy, my own book, Living Actualized, about energy, Tony Robbins' Life Force, about energy, Anything Can Be Healed, about energy, Book of Floating, about energy, The Plastic Mind, about energy, all about energy, all of these things, David Hawkins, energy, the complete system of self-healing. Now, this is fundamentally all about the internal organs. So that's the other side of this. So we start with the breath, yeah? But then the next move is that we're always thinking about what's going on out here. But what was his name? Brian Johnson, who I originally kicked this whole thing off with, the idea of the guy who's doing Blueprint, super high-tech multi-millionaire that's spending something like $2.5 million a year on trying to become 18 again. Now, like I said, I haven't got the $2.5 million to spend to become 18, but I want to have the body and the functionality of an 18. I'm not necessarily so concerned about having a few wrinkles and a few lines. That's part of the mix. And really, I've been out in the sun so much that I have, I've never worn sunscreen. I've never done any of that sort of stuff. Lived in the tropics, so there's a lot of sun damage on my skin, and I'm aware of that. And I do want to address that and see if there's a way that, well, I know there's a way that you can reinvigorate the skin as well, reinvigorate the complexion. So we'll look into that as well as we go through this journey. I'm on this journey, so you're coming on this journey with me. We're doing it together. So we're seeing, can I have the vitas and the vitality and the flexibility and the sense of beauty and wonder in my body of an athletic 18-year-old, which is what Brian Johnson's looking to do. Of course you can. Yes, of course. Can I do it at 60? Maybe. We'll see. Can I have a really good, beautiful complexion and enjoy this process? Can I feel the energy and the life in my skin? Yes, of course. Of course I can. We're going to explore this. How do we do this? How do we make this happen without having to spend $2.5 million to make that happen? Now, the other thing is that I thought Brian Johnson made a very good point in some of his interviews about Blueprint, is the fact that he was saying he fired what he calls, I think it's 5 p.m. Brian or whatever, the part of him that would make him do things that were detrimental to his health, that were really not helping him to feel a sense of expansion, a sense of positive energy about life. Now, we all have his kind of equivalent of that, but really, when we go into this system, we start moving through it like he experienced, we will discover that we stop wanting to do the things that create harm. Now, the first thing he said that I thought was pretty interesting was that his internal organs, like his heart, his liver, his kidneys, his lungs, his pancreas, all of these internal organs. Now, interestingly, there's 78 internal organs, and I'm connected into this, but there's also, like the cards, tarot cards behind me, there's 78 cards in the tarot deck, so they're all associated. So it's very interesting how this all fits together in our reality, the kind of the dream that we find ourselves, the beautiful dream. So these internal organs are part of the vessel, and yet they don't, when we're opening, pouring the fourth or fifth glass of wine, that our liver is not getting much of a look in to say, no, that's not a great idea to do that. Or the person that we wake up as tomorrow feeling groggy and dissatisfied and feeling that they're coming into a life they don't really want to live into, doesn't get a say in that. So the process of invigorating and enlivening and energizing, bringing energy to the internal organs, giving them a say in what's going on is totally fundamental. And this idea of the internal exercises, which I'll be going into probably in the next video, we're connected with all the breath work. Now, this is all really about breath. This is all really about directing energy into various parts of your body to bring them to life, to heal them, to regenerate them, to, in fact, enhance them. So really, it's a process of moving towards enhancement. So it's not just about kind of stopping the damage. So we stop doing the damage that we're doing, and then we look to revitalize and then enhance, to then go past that point of what just ordinary things would give us. So we're looking for extraordinary. We're looking to go beyond just getting by, and we're going to move up a level to where we're really having that amazing quality of experience of life. So just for now, it's really good to connect him with the work of James Nestor. He explains it all beautifully in his book, Breath. It's a fantastic book. Highly recommend it. And once you've read that, and once you've got to what he's saying in that, you will start to notice this idea of the damage that we do through mouth breathing. Now, until I can't remember how old I was, but even this idea of the gum degeneration, not only was it caused by me, brushing too hard over the years at my teeth and the problems that I've had with my teeth, but I'm very clear that I was a mouth breather. We're nearly all mouth breathers. And it wasn't until quite late in my life that I really connected these things together and realized that a lot, like even the vision as well, that I've talked about in another video. So the idea that the breath is the fundamental factor in all of this, yeah? This is the thing that God gives us to fill our vessels up with energy. This is the connection to the divine, to the extraordinary. It begins with something as simple as the breath. You don't need to go and spend $100 million to develop kernel or any of these other devices to peer into us and whatnot. You don't actually, it may be fascinating to do that. I'm nothing against that, but you can start to understand what's going on within you to begin to build a picture of this entirety of your being. And it starts with the breath. So it's sometimes very difficult to get in through the mind and through the spirit and all of those things. But the thing that we do all the time, the thing that is inescapable, is our breath. So begin to notice your breathing, how you breathe, and just the frequency of your breath, how your breath changes in various situations, how your breathing even changes when you're in the presence of different people. when you're in pursuit of different things? How does this all affect your breath? And you'll notice that the breath is the part of us that is, it just happens. And we are given that little micro element of control or will, to will, as Schopenhauer, to will the will of nature. So the will of nature is what happens, and it's our everything just going on as it will. And then within that, the little room to pay attention and notice what is taking place, notice what is happening, and become aware of those things. Now, awareness of the breath, awareness of the energy, awareness of how we are positioning ourselves, what's going on, to become aware of ourselves as we move through this world, this reality, and bring that awareness to bear on creating this sense of invigoration. Because I'm on this journey, you're on this journey, and there is no end to this journey. But as it goes on, we want to see a vast improvement, an enhancement, and an invigoration that we perhaps didn't think was possible for where we're at now. And this is what I want for you, to understand that it's possible to really transform ourselves, to become a different version of ourselves, a more enriched and enriching version of yourself is possible. So let's do this. So let's start with right here with the breath, and do this over the next few days. And I highly, like I said, highly recommend getting James Nestor's book, Breath. It's a really good place to start. You could go into all these different yogic techniques, all of these different Zen breaths and Tumo breaths and shamanic breaths and all of these different things. But James Nestor really goes into the beginning of it all and it unfolds it through a kind of narrative, which makes it very easy to come to terms with how you fit into this and what would be a good starting point for you in terms of your breath. And I'm just saying that I'm kind of like, the punchline really is to understand that nasal breathing, if you can switch to breathing through your nose primarily, you will discover that your sense of energy, the energy that you feel in yourself, the sense of aliveness you feel in yourself, will automatically be enhanced. So let's just start there. Now, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this stuff, if you're interested in having that high quality of experience. And by the way, just as Brian Johnson's done his thing called Blueprint, I'm going to be putting together, as we move through this Trinity process. So I will make that available so you can actually go through this process and see all of the interconnected things that I'm going to be talking about. All of these things, these thousands of books that I've read, all condensed into what is actually effective, what will actually make the difference to you living an extraordinary life and being able to not only feel the presence of the divine, feel the presence of God traveling through you, to experience life on a level that we were always meant to experience it. This is our natural state. And as you will know, our culture and the way that we've been taught to experience life, what we've told is possible, keeps us in a downgraded quality of life. And once you have an upgraded, a high quality of experience, a high quality of life, high quality of reality, the things that would normally kick you off track and make you feel bad and make you feel sad become possibilities and opportunities. And because you have the energy and the vitality, this is an energy game. Everything is an energy game. It's all about energy. If you have no energy, it's difficult to engage with anything. if you have no energy and vitality, then you have to accept what you're given. You're always on the back foot. And what we want to do is become fully empowered, engaged, enriched human beings. So don't forget to subscribe if you're interested in this, if you really want to take this on and move forward with this. I'm on this process, like I said. I've got many things that I want to upgrade, revitalize and fix and to take up to a whole new level. We'll do whatever we can to make that possible. So subscribe, like, share this, join me on the journey. Thank you for watching.